The night my stepmother touched my shoulder for the first time. I felt the chill long before her fingers met my skin. It wasn't the kind of cold that comes from weather, it was quieter, older. Like something that had forgotten how to be warm. Her name was Marianne, but my father always called her Mare. Softening the edges of her name the way people do when they're afraid of sharp things. She'd moved in 6 months after my mother's funeral, and even then, I'd known something about her didn't belong in our house. She was too careful, too silent, too aware of the spaces between her words. When I asked my father what he saw in her, he said, peace, but peace, I've learned, can look a lot like surrender. That winter, the world seemed to freeze in place. My father's company went under, the creditors started calling. He'd stay up late by the fire, muttering numbers and debts under his breath. Marianne would sit beside him, calm, always calm. Her hand resting lightly on his arm like a spell that kept him from breaking. One night, I found her standing alone by the window, her breath fogging the glass. Outside, the snow had turned the yard into a pale wasteland. She didn't turn when I entered. Couldn't sleep? I asked. Her reflection smiled, but her face didn't. It's hard to rest when the world's forgetting you. What do you mean? She finally looked at me. Her eyes were gray, the kind of gray that never really ends. Your father thinks debts disappear if you ignore them. But they don't. They wait. Everything waits. I wanted to ask what she was waiting for, but she'd already turned back to the glass. 2 weeks later, my father collapsed. They said it was his heart. The doctor used the word stress. I used the word Marianne. She didn't cry at the funeral. She just stood there, gloved hands folded neatly. Face as still as marble. The wind whipped snow across the cemetery, catching in her hair. She looked almost beautiful that day, beautiful in the way a statue is, just before it cracks. Afterward, she invited me back to the house. There are things of his you should have, she said. Inside, the air was colder than outside. She'd turned off the heat. The silence felt heavy, as if the walls were holding their breath. In his study, she opened a drawer and pulled out a small, worn envelope. He wanted you to have this, she said. I took it. The paper was brittle, the seal half broken. Inside was a single sheet with my name scrawled across the top. If something happens to me, don't trust her. She knows. I looked up sharply. Marianne's expression didn't change. Knows what? I asked. Her smile returned, faint, cold. That depends on what you've done. I didn't sleep that night. The letter burned in my mind, every word heavier than the last. What did she know? What had my father done? By morning, I had my answer, or part of it. I found the key. It was hidden in the back of his drawer, taped under a false bottom. A small brass key with the initials RW etched into it. His initials. The key fit a box in the attic, one I'd never seen before. Inside were papers, bank statements, deeds, letters. All addressed to someone named Clara Hensley. And then I found the photograph. My father, years younger, standing beside a woman with dark hair and gray eyes. Not Marianne. But close enough that for a moment, I thought it was her. On the back, in my father's handwriting, for you, my Clara, forever, until winter ends. When I went downstairs, Marianne was waiting in the kitchen, already dressed. A cup of tea steaming in her hands. You found it, she said. I froze. Found what? The attic box. She smiled without looking up. You think I didn't know where he kept his ghosts? Who was she? Her eyes flicked up to mine. Your mother's sister. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. Not impossible, she said softly. Just inconvenient. I stared at her. You killed him. Marianne's smile didn't falter. He killed himself, darling. I just gave him a reason to be honest first. The teacup clinked softly against the saucer. Outside, snow began to fall again. Slow, deliberate, endless. She reached out then, fingers brushing my cheek, her touch colder than the air between us. Your father loved winter, she whispered. He said it preserved things. I think he was right. When she turned to leave, she didn't look back. The door shut behind her with a sound I'll never forget, like glass breaking under ice. And for the first time, I understood what she meant. Nothing ever really dies in the cold. It just waits. The snow never melted after she left. It stayed crusted along the porch, hanging heavy on the trees. The way grief clings when it's had time to freeze solid. The house was silent except for the wind moving through the cracks. I could still feel her touch sometimes, the strange, soft chill that didn't fade with warmth. I spent days trying to piece together what she meant. Your mother's sister. It didn't make sense. My mother, Laura, had no family. That's what my father always said. No cousins, no parents, no one. But maybe that was the first lie. The town clerk's office was half an hour away. I drove there through a blizzard thick enough to make the world disappear. And I asked for every record under the name Laura Whitfield. The clerk squinted, flipping through old files, dust and time rising like breath. There's a marriage certificate, he said finally, and a birth record. But there's another Whitfield, same parents, born 2 years earlier, Clara. I felt the world tilt. Clara Hensley? He looked closer. Married once, yes, to a Richard Hensley. No death certificate, though. She just vanished. My father's name wasn't on the file, but I didn't need it to be. I could already feel him moving in the spaces between the words. That night the house didn't feel empty anymore. I caught movement at the edge of my vision, the way shadows leaned. The faint scrape of a door settling. When I passed the study, I swear I saw her reflection in the glass, even though she was gone. And then the phone rang. I hadn't heard that sound in weeks. When I picked up, no one spoke. Only breathing, slow, deliberate, too close. Marianne? I asked. Nothing. Then a whisper, faint but sharp enough to cut through static. You should stop looking, Adam. You won't like what's left. The line went dead. I didn't sleep. The next morning, the power went out. The world beyond the windows was nothing but white, a sky buried under itself. I lit a fire and searched through the box again. There were letters, dozens of them, sealed with wax, addressed from RW to CH. The earliest were tender, almost romantic. My dearest Clara, she'll never forgive me, but it doesn't matter. The heart knows its own gravity. Then they changed. Clara, she knows. I can't undo this. If you come to the house again, she'll kill you. Please stay away. The last one was written in a shaking hand. It wasn't supposed to end like this. She's not who you think. The date was the same week my mother died. At dusk, I heard the door open downstairs. I thought the wind had forced it. But when I went to check, there were footprints, small, deliberate, leading through the snow toward the lake behind the house. I followed them, the cold biting through my shoes, my breath fogging in the dim light. The trail ended at the dock, half buried in frost. Something was there, wedged beneath the ice. A shape. I crouched and brushed away the snow. Wood, metal hinges, a small chest. The lock had already been broken. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. My father, younger. My mother, smiling. And another woman beside her, identical except for one small difference. Her eyes. Gray. Marianne's eyes. The wind rose behind me, a whisper pulling through the trees. I turned, and she was standing there. Her hair was dusted with snow, her coat unbuttoned, her skin pale as the frost itself. I told you to stop, she said softly. I took a step back. You were sisters. Her lips curved, not into a smile but something colder. We were everything. Sisters, rivals, mirrors. What did you do to her? She did it to herself, she whispered. She loved him enough to forgive what I couldn't. She took another step closer. He told you I killed him, didn't he? He always liked to leave his mess in other people's hands. I saw the letter. Her voice lowered. Then you know he was dying long before I touched him. Why come back? I asked. To see if you'd figure it out. To see if you'd choose truth or comfort. I want both. She smiled then, the kind of smile that doesn't belong to the living. Then you'll end up like him. The snow flared, wind slashing between us. When I looked again, she was gone. Only her footprints remained, 2 lines leading back toward the trees, fading into white. I stood there until the cold reached my bones. When I turned toward the house, something glittered in the snow near the chest. A ring. My father's wedding band. Inside, engraved words I'd never seen before. For Clara. Until winter ends. I slipped it into my pocket and whispered her name into the empty air. The wind carried it away. And from somewhere deep in the forest, a voice answered, soft, familiar, and unbearably sad. It never does. I didn't tell anyone what happened at the lake. I couldn't have explained it even if I wanted to. When I got home that night, the snow clung to me like it didn't want to let go. Every room in the house felt slightly wrong. As if the furniture had shifted by an inch or the air had been rearranged. I tried to sleep but I kept hearing that voice. It never does. It was her voice. And it didn't sound like a ghost's. It sounded like regret, made audible. By morning, the ring in my pocket had turned colder than the air. The next few days blurred together. I kept finding traces of her, the faint smell of her perfume in the hallway. The sound of footsteps on the stairs when I knew I was alone. The house had started remembering her even after she'd gone. Then, 3 nights later, I woke to a sound downstairs. Not creaking, something deliberate. Movement. I grabbed a flashlight and followed it into the kitchen. The back door was open. Snow had blown in, covering the floor in a thin, glittering film. The footprints led to the cellar. When I opened the door, the smell hit first, dust, rot, something faintly metallic. The flashlight beam caught on a tarp. Beneath it, boxes. I tore the first one open. Inside were books, journals, old cassettes labeled in neat handwriting. Laura 1993, Clara 1995. Robert 2000. I pressed play on the first tape I grabbed. Static, then a woman's voice, warm, quiet, trembling. If you find this, it means he's done it again. He promised me it would stop. That the past would stay buried. But people like him don't stop, they collect things. Hearts, lives, lies. And she's next. God help her, she thinks she's different. I froze. It was my mother's voice. I fast-forwarded. Another voice joined hers, lower, familiar. My father. You can't keep running to her. She's nothing like you. No, my mother said. She's exactly like me. That's why you can't love us both. Then a crash. A door slamming. Silence. When I went back upstairs, I noticed the fire had been lit in the living room. I hadn't lit it. She was there. Marianne sat in my father's old chair, her coat draped over the armrest. Her gloved hands folded neatly in her lap. "You found the tapes," she said. I didn't answer. "I always wondered how long it would take you." "What are they?" I asked. "Your mother's diary," she said softly. He kept them to remind himself that she'd loved him once. He said it made him feel human. "And you?" "I kept them because she asked me to." I stared at her. "You expect me to believe that?" She looked into the fire. "You think I came here to destroy you. But the truth is, I came here to finish what your mother started." She rose, walked to the window, and drew the curtain aside. Outside, the snow reflected the flames from the hearth. "You know what happens when you mix fire and ice?" she asked. "They kill each other trying to exist." "She was your sister," I said. "Yes," Marianne whispered. "And I loved her. More than he ever could. That was the problem. She knew about you. She forgave me." "Did she forgive him?" Her eyes flicked toward me. "She tried. He wouldn't let her." I felt something sharp turn in my chest. "You killed him." Marianne smiled, sad and slow. "No." I reminded him of everything he'd buried. The guilt did the rest. She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. "He wrote this for you before he died." I was supposed to burn it. I didn't. She placed it on the table and turned to leave. "Where are you going?" "Where winter doesn't reach," she said. When she was gone, I opened the letter. "Adam, if she's given you this, then she's done what I never could, told you the truth. Your mother didn't die in the accident. She drowned herself the night she found out what I'd done. Marianne found her first. She was the one who pulled her from the water. She begged me to tell you, but I couldn't. I thought lies were mercy. They weren't." My hands shook so badly the paper tore. I could feel the cold creeping up again, that same quiet chill that had been in her touch. The fire went out suddenly, though no wind moved. I turned toward the window. Through the frost, I saw her one last time, standing by the tree line. Her pale coat bright against the dark. She raised her hand, the same one that had once brushed my cheek. And for the first time, I realized what she'd meant all along. Her touch had never been cold because she lacked warmth. It was cold because she'd been carrying the dead with her the whole time. And now, finally, she was ready to let them go. After she vanished, the house fell into a strange kind of quiet, like the air itself was waiting for something that would never arrive. The fire had burned down to embers, soft and red, the smell of smoke clinging to the curtains. I sat in my father's chair until morning, holding the letter, tracing the torn edge with my thumb. Outside, snow kept falling, erasing the world in slow motion. By noon, the roads were buried. I stayed inside and listened to the house breathe. Pipes groaned. Wood shifted. Somewhere in the walls, I could hear faint dripping, like melting ice. And then I heard it, 3 soft knocks at the front door. When I opened it, no one was there. Just a box, small and square, the cardboard damp with melted snow. No return address. Inside, wrapped in linen, was an old silver compact. I knew it immediately. It had been my mother's. There was a note tucked beneath it. "For when you're ready to see yourself clearly." No signature. That night, I sat by the window with the compact in my hand. The hinge creaked when I opened it. Inside, the mirror was cracked straight down the middle. My reflection split neatly into 2 halves, one living, one hollow. And in that shattered image, I saw her. Not Marianne. Not my mother. Both. Their faces overlapped, merging in the silver like 2 memories colliding. I dropped it. The mirror fractured further, splintering the glass into a dozen tiny eyes. Each one still watched me. The air in the room grew colder. I turned, half expecting to see her standing there again. Instead, I saw the door to the cellar open by itself. The darkness below was absolute. I shouldn't have gone down. But something in me, the same part that had once believed in my father's letters and Marianne's lies, needed to know what waited underneath. At the bottom of the stairs, I found another box. Larger, wooden, locked with the same brass key I'd used months ago. When I opened it, the smell hit me first: dust, earth, and something faintly floral. Inside was a single photograph. It showed my mother and Marianne as girls. Not twins but close. My mother's arm draped around her sister, both smiling at something out of frame. Written on the back, in a looping hand. She was always the colder one. Underneath the photo was a folded piece of fabric, faded blue silk, stiff with age. A dress. My mother's. The one she'd been wearing when they found her body. Except, she hadn't been buried in it. I held the dress and felt something fall out from the hem. A small, rusted key. Upstairs, I searched every room. The key fit a drawer in the old writing desk my father had kept locked for years. Inside were letters, my father's handwriting again, but these were different. Not love letters. Records. 1952 Clara admitted to Elmwood Asylum. Diagnosis: delusional episodes, emotional instability. 1955 Discharged under the care of guardian, Robert Whitfield. 1956 Changed name to Marianne. The world tilted. I read it again, then again. Marianne hadn't been her sister. She was my mother. Or what was left of her. I dropped the file. The sound echoed through the empty house like a gunshot. My breath came fast, my vision blurring. If it was true, if she'd been institutionalized, renamed, rewritten, then who was the woman who raised me before? Who had drowned? My hands shook as I picked up the letter she'd given me, the one from my father. I noticed something I hadn't before, a faint watermark, almost invisible in the paper. The crest of Elmwood Asylum. I looked back toward the cellar door. The cold was seeping up through the floorboards again, slow and steady. And in the silence between heartbeats, I heard it, her voice, soft, echoing. The same rhythm as breath. He took my name, Adam. He took everything, but you can give it back. The wind howled outside. The lights flickered. I ran to the mirror, the broken one in the compact. My reflection wavered, flickering between faces. Hers. Mine. Hers again. And for a moment, I didn't know which one of us was speaking when I whispered. I remember now. By dawn, I buried the compact in the snow near the lake. The sun rose pale and distant, catching on the shards of ice. Each one flashed like a piece of mirror, 100 faces looking up from below. I didn't know if she was still alive, if any of it had ever been real. But the house felt different now, lighter, almost forgiving. Maybe she wasn't my stepmother. Maybe she wasn't my mother, either. Maybe she was something in between, someone who'd spent a lifetime trying to become whole. Even if it meant wearing two names. And maybe the cold in her touch had never been cruelty. Maybe it was just what happens when someone carries every version of herself through too many winters. The snow began to fall again, soft and endless. I closed my eyes and let it cover the grave of glass and memory. Somewhere beneath it, the wind whispered the only truth I needed to keep. She wasn't the colder one, she was the one who stayed. The first thaw came late that year, like the world itself didn't want to let go of winter. By then, I'd stopped checking the mailbox. There were no letters left to send, no ghosts left who cared enough to write back. Still, I found myself standing by the window each morning, watching the snow retreat in slow, reluctant sighs. The lake thawed last, its surface cracked apart like old glass. Dark water emerging in jagged lines. And that's when I saw her again. Marianne. She was standing by the dock, the same place where I'd buried the compact. She didn't look like a ghost this time. She looked like someone who had been waiting for spring. I went down without a coat, my breath fogging in the cold air. "You came back," I said. She smiled faintly. "I never really left." "You lied to me," I said. "About who you were. About everything." She nodded. "Because I couldn't be her anymore. Clara died when your father buried her name. I became Marianne so I could live long enough to take something back." "And what was that?" She looked at the lake, her reflection breaking against the thin ripples. "The truth. He took that from me. From both of us." For a while, neither of us spoke. The sound of melting ice filled the silence, the world slowly remembering how to breathe. Finally, I said, "If you were my mother, why didn't you tell me?" Her voice was calm. "Because I wasn't sure who you'd hate more, him for what he did, or me for what I became." "I don't hate you," I said. "I just don't understand you." "Good," she said softly. "You shouldn't." She reached into her coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When she unfolded it, I saw what it was, the cracked mirror from the compact. She must have dug it up. "I kept one piece," she said. "The rest belongs to her." She handed it to me. I looked down, expecting to see my reflection fractured again. But this time, it was whole, patched somehow, though the cracks still glimmered faintly beneath the surface. "You fixed it," I said. "No," she whispered. "It fixed itself. Time does that. It doesn't heal, but it makes room." I didn't know what to say. My chest felt tight, full of something heavy that wasn't anger anymore. "Why are you here?" I asked. "To say goodbye." She stepped closer, the cold radiating from her like memory. Her hand lifted, hovered near my cheek, but didn't touch. "I loved you the best way I knew how," she said. "Even when I wasn't allowed to." The wind stirred the lake, scattering light across the water. For a second, she looked like two people again, one made of warmth, the other of shadow. "Where will you go?" I asked. She smiled. "Somewhere I don't have to be anyone else." Then she pressed the mirror into my hand and turned toward the lake. "Don't," I said. But she didn't stop. The ice cracked beneath her boots, groaning, splintering. She stepped onto the surface like it was solid ground. Like she was walking on the years she'd lost. "Marianne." She looked back once. Her expression wasn't sorrow. It was peace. "I told you, Adam," she said. "Nothing ever dies in the cold." Then the ice gave way. I ran forward, but by the time I reached the edge, she was gone. Only the ripples remained, circles widening until the lake swallowed them too. The thaw ended a week later. The world moved on. I kept the mirror on the mantel, where sunlight hit it every morning. Sometimes I caught her reflection there, not haunting, not warning, just watching. When the light fades, the cracks reappear, thin and bright, like silver veins. And I think about what she said, that some people don't survive truth, they become it. Maybe she hadn't drowned at all. Maybe she'd simply gone where the water remembers names the world forgets. One evening, I took the mirror down and walked to the lake. The water was still again, dark and deep, the surface so smooth it looked like sky. I knelt and held the mirror just above it. For a moment, both reflections, the lake's and mine, blurred into one. Then I let it go. The glass sank slowly, catching the last of the light before vanishing beneath the surface. The wind rose, gentle this time, not cold. And in that sound, I heard her voice again, not warning, not apology. Just a whisper softer than breath. Now it's your turn to remember. I stood there until the stars came out, the air sharp and clean. And for the first time, the cold didn't hurt. It felt like truth, quiet, steady, endless. Spring came early that year, as if the world wanted to pretend the winter had never happened. The lake thawed completely, its surface rippling under the pale sun. But I still saw her there sometimes, Mary Ann, my mother. My ghost, just beyond the reach of reflection. People in town stopped asking about me. That's how small towns forgive, by forgetting. They said the house was cursed, then they sold it. Someone else lives there now. They painted over the walls, but I know some stains don't fade. I rented a small place near the edge of the forest. The air smells like wet soil and birch. I keep the curtains open. I tell myself I'm done searching for ghosts. But most nights I still find myself listening for her voice. The silence she left behind has a shape. One morning, while unpacking boxes I hadn't touched since the house, I found something I didn't remember keeping, a photograph. The edges were torn, the image faded, but I knew it immediately. My father, my mother, and me. Except it wasn't quite right. The woman's face wasn't my mother's, it was Mary Ann's, younger. Her smile unguarded, her hand resting on my father's shoulder. My mother's handwriting on the back read, "If she ever comes back, tell her I understand." The air left my lungs. The paper trembled in my hand. She'd known. She'd known all along who Mary Ann was, what she would become. And somehow, she'd forgiven her before it even happened. That kind of forgiveness doesn't belong to the living. It's too heavy, too pure. That night, I dreamt of them, my father standing by the lake, Mary Ann at his side. The water was frozen again, reflecting the stars like broken glass. "You look like her," he said. "Which one?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Both." Mary Ann turned toward me then. "You carry our sins," she said softly. "But not our shame. Don't make the same mistake we did." "What mistake?" She looked at the water. "Thinking the past needs saving." When I woke, dawn was spilling into the room, golden and calm. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. I started writing again. Small things at first, memories, fragments of truth. The kind of stories that hurt until they finally stop. Sometimes I write her name in the margins just to see it there. To make sure it still means something. I've learned that the past doesn't vanish, it softens. It waits until you're ready to hold it without bleeding. And I am. This morning, I went back to the lake one last time. The ice was gone, the water clear and deep. Beneath the surface, something glimmered faintly, a shard of glass, maybe. Or sunlight bending through memory. I reached down but didn't touch it. Some things are meant to stay submerged. As I stood there, a wind passed through the trees, carrying the faintest echo of her voice. Nothing really dies in the cold, Adam. It just waits for the thaw. I closed my eyes and let the sound move through me, the way light moves through water. When I opened them again, the reflection on the lake was mine alone. And for the first time, I didn't see ghosts. I saw continuity, blood, memory, forgiveness, all the fragile things that survive the frost. I turned toward home. The air was warmer than I remembered. The world was thawing. And somewhere, far beneath the surface, winter was finally sleeping.